Well, good morning and welcome everybody to our incredible webinar here, Resilient Parks, Resilient Californians. So excited to host another chat with an incredible park champion in our secretary, Wade Crowfoot. Thank you, Wade, for coming and joining us today. Secretary Crowfoot was appointed to the Natural Resources Agency by Governor Newsom in 2019. It looks like we are having a little bit, oh, there he is. Okay, sorry, there was some strange.
Hopefully that's the only technical difficulties.
Yeah, I was like, wait, we lost you. Yeah, so Secretary Crowfoot was appointed by the governor in 2019. He oversees the California Natural Resources Agency, which has over 19,000 employees and is really charged with protecting and preserving our diverse natural resources throughout California. We have gotten to know the secretary and has found him to be an incredible champion for access and equitable access to the outdoors, in addition to advocating for the incredible biodiversity of our state natural resources. And we're extremely happy to have you. Thank you, Wade, for joining us. And to kick us off, we have our executive director, Rachel Norton, here to start the show.
All right, well, thanks, Holly, and welcome everyone. Really excited to see how much interest there is this morning. I think you're a little bit of a rock star, Mr. Secretary, and really just wanted to extend my thanks to you and to the governor for the incredible work that you're doing during this incredibly challenging time for California. And, you know, I think I have a lot of empathy for the governor in trying to navigate what is a really difficult political situation as well. And I think I can speak for many of us on this webinar to extend my thanks for your standing up for California yesterday. So we're really excited for this discussion. I'm going to hop to the background and just be an audience member. It's Holly's show, but just wanted to express my thanks and welcome to you for doing this and being with us today.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
All right, have a good discussion.
Thanks, Rachel. So a few ground rules for all of our participants here. We are going to keep everybody on mute. I will hold true to our commitment that we will keep this to a half hour, since everyone has very busy schedules in this crazy Zoom world that we live in. We're also encouraging everybody in the chat feature to ask your questions. We will try to get to them. If we can't, we will address them later on down the line through our communications, as well as say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. As Rachel mentioned, we had a really high interest. I think over 500 people registered to join us today. So I'm really excited. So let's just jump right on into it. Wade, you know, California's on fire, and we know that we have so many incredible parks, so many communities have been impacted by these devastating fires. I read a statistics, I think we're at what, 3.1 million acres have burned. That means, you know, unfortunately 20 fatalities, people have lost their lives, their communities have been upended. We've technically haven't started fire season. The fact that we have a fire season is quite extraordinary. And now that we are already in it, it's 26 times more fires than we experienced just in last year alone. So tell us, like, what's going through your mind, the governor's mind, all of your vigilant employees, everyone who's working in state parks and on the front lines of the fires during this really challenging time.
Well, thanks for the question, Holly, and thanks to you and Rachel for having this discussion. I've been tracking these different discussions you've been having, including with our first partner, Jennifer Seibel Newsom, and I think it's a great way to maintain the conversation even as we need to separate physically during the pandemic. These are challenging times, and not only in California. Large portions of the West Coast are on fire in Oregon and Washington State. Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands Americans evacuated from communities. Here in California, we have 25 active fire complexes, called complexes because we've had situations where individual fires have actually burned together. While wildfire is part of California's ecology, this is not part of the historic norm. In other words, we're seeing fire activity in the last several years, but particularly this year, that we've never seen before. A fire in the Creek Fire, Fresno, Madera County, that burns so hot, it creates its own type of cloud, 50,000 feet in the sky, from intense heats driven by so much tree mortality in that region. That tree mortality, of course, driven by the mega drought we recently had. We're seeing tens of thousands of acres of redwood forests, coastal redwood forests, burned that never burned at that scale before. We all know that your coastal forests, or redwood forests, I should say, tend to be foggy and damp. So we are seeing the very real impacts of climate change in California. And Governor Newsom put it succinctly on Friday, California is America fast forward on climate impacts. In other words, we are experiencing the severity of climate impacts that other parts of the country will experience in different ways if we don't actually come together with the rest of the world to attack, climate change. So we're really focused on obviously protecting people, protecting our natural resources in this fire season, but also with our eyes clearly looking forward, understanding the severity of the problem. You asked about state parks. Obviously, so many participants here today are parks champions. Of our 280 state parks, we've had dozens of our park units impacted. You may know that we break out our park system in 21 units. 10 of those units have been impacted by the fires over the last 2 months. And as you may know, Big Basin State Park, the first state park that was created in our system in Santa Cruz County, the home of old growth, 1,500-year-old redwoods, obviously burned. Major destruction, almost all structures lost. And of course, our incredible giant trees also burned. The good news, of course, or the silver lining of the situation in Big Basin is it is very likely that those redwood trees will survive and continue to grow. So that's a huge deal. But I have to say, we've been in a dead sprint for the last several months battling this pandemic and now the wildfires. And my heart goes out to the communities, the employees, the people who have lost their homes as a result of this, the 16,000 men and women on the fire line right now, and of course, so many others outside of California.
Yeah, we join you in that sentiment and have heard an outpouring of response, and a lot of our members who support the foundation have answered our call to a wildfire fund, and we've been raising some immediate relief to help support state park personnel, who've been displaced without homes, as well as offices that have burned down, and just trying to help, meet basic human needs in this time of where we all need to come together in a compassionate way. You mentioned the governor and talking about America fast forward, and I really love that phrase. So I kind of think about, well, let's think about America fast forward 10, 20 years from now, and the vision that you and the governor have for how we are combating the impact of climate change. What does that look like? And what do we need to do today to come together to create the fast forward America that we want to live in, and the California that we believe represents the resilience and the brilliance of our people and our state?
Yeah, well, I think we need to do two fundamental things. First, we need to acknowledge that the impacts of climate change are here and with us right now. And we have to do a lot more to protect communities and natural places in California and the rest of America from the impacts of climate change. And in California, that can include floods, droughts, wildfires, sea level rise, extreme heat. Climate change is very clearly causing more extreme weather and general warming both in winter and summer months. We obviously experienced exploding temperatures just a few weeks ago, over 120 degrees in greater Los Angeles. So we need to recognize that and understand that and actually make investments and take actions to protect against those impacts. In the area of wildfire, that does mean we have to actually get in and manage our forests in an ecologically sustainable way. The president obviously has talked about so-called forest management as something that needs to happen. We agree. And under Governor Newsom, we've increased investments in community fuel breaks, prescribed fire, things that actually reintroduce more of a natural conditions onto our forest landscapes. We need the federal government to actually do its part as well. A lot of folks don't know.
It looks like we lost your video.
I'm coming.
We can still hear you. So if you want to keep going.
Okay.
Oh.
So sorry.
There you go. It's okay. It's the year of crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that 57% of California's forests are owned and managed by the federal government. And so while the president has talked a lot about forest management, we're really looking forward to investments, more investments by federal agencies in stewarding that 57% of California's forests in a sustainable way. So Holly, that's one sort of key action we can take, is build our climate resilience, which I sort of distill as protecting our people and nature against the impacts of climate change. The other piece, of course, is to continue to lead the fight against climate change by reducing our carbon pollution. And this may not have as direct a link to parks, but it's important to note that California for well over a decade has been leading the world shifting to a low carbon economy. Today, almost 2/3 of the energy that powers the 5th largest economy in the world comes from carbon-free energy generation. And we're moving towards 100%. We have 700,000 electric vehicles on the roads. The second most valuable export from California is actually electric cars. And Tesla is now the most valuable car company on the planet. We've shown in California that we can continue to achieve and grow economic prosperity and reduce carbon emissions. We've effectively decoupled economic growth from pollution. There's a lot more work that we need to do on that, obviously, but one key point to make is we can combat these impacts of climate change while we reduce our carbon pollution. We think it's just a smart thing to do for the rest of the country and America in general to combat climate change, but also modernize our economy and recover out of this pandemic in a way that's both economically sustainable, that advances our prosperity as well.
Yeah, I want to kind of dig into something you had mentioned just a moment ago, and that was a little bit about the pandemic and how building climate resiliency is not just about the place, but the people. And I think we at the foundation really believe that people can come together, that the manpower of people, whether it's through volunteerism in our state parks, pulling invasive species, helping with keeping trails clear and helping with buffer zones, as well as what individuals can do who are committed to these places, do have a lot of power. But I think it's a little bit more than just what an individual can do and the impact of climate change has on a community. And one thing that has been really clear is that when we lack resilience, whether it's in our place and our people, things like a pandemic, like a wildfire, like the impacts of climate change really do have incremental impacts, quite devastating on families. And so we're thinking about how can parks be a part of this solution? How can state parks, our regional, local, how can we all come together as an environmental pro-park community to say, these places are for everybody. When we protect them, we are protecting the people. What sort of ideas and opportunities do you see for us to do this? Because I think we're learning everything is interconnected here. Would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, there's a quote I encountered fairly recently that I think has really, kind of moved me, and that is, nature is not a place you visit, it is our home. And that's a quote by Gary Snyder, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning poet and former academic at UC Davis, lives just up the road in Yuba County. And the whole idea is, actually, we can't separate people from nature. we have to make sure that we steward our natural resources, our nature, in ways that include people. And tribal leadership that I have the honor of working with have really driven home this point. You know, the modern environmental movement, I think, in some ways tries to put nature and separate nature from people, to protect it from people, to set it aside. And obviously, you know, wilderness areas are important, but from my perspective, if we're going to actually effectively steward our environment, people have to be really central to that. And frankly, more people than have historically been involved in this effort. You know, what gets Gavin Newsom up in the morning, as well as his partner, Jennifer, is building a California for all, tackling this growing inequity we have in our country and our state, and ensuring there's an equity of opportunity and ultimately prosperity for everybody. At the Natural Resources Agency, we have taken that mandate and really translated it to our mission, and that is creating outdoors for all, really natural resources for all. And that means actually getting a broader cross-section of Californians actually involved in our parks and our parks movement, and recognizing that there are systemic inequities and that create differing opportunities depending on the zip code you live in, the complexion and the socioeconomic status of your community. So part of this work, Holly, is not only making sure that sort of California's population is really engaged in our environmental stewardship, but also working to actually broaden access for more Californians to our parks and open spaces. And glad to talk more about that if it's helpful.
I think it is. It's part of this overall story that how we build future stewardship starts with experiences and experiences at a young age. We have been focused on for a while really increasing equitable access to communities that are more challenged in barriers to get there, specifically focusing on our young generation, knowing that when they feel a connection to these places, when they feel a part of it, when they see their relevance in these spaces, and you know, understand the incredible healing, whether it be mental health, physical health, all the attributes that we know being outside produces in the form of benefits, we see those as, you know, the voices for parks in the future. They are the ones who are going to be incremental in combating climate change through personal choice, community engagement, and stewarding these places, so that we look at, you know, America fast forward 20 years from now, they're the faces who are doing this webinar, talking about their personal experiences. And so we're really grateful that you and the governor and the first partner have been those champions for access and equitable access. And, you know, things that you guys have supported, from AB 209 that does the outdoor equity grants to, you know, the governor's vision of parks for all that he has been very adamant about. So I think, you know, time is now to act. It's easy in times of crisis to put on the back burner preventative measures, but if we are going to think about combating climate change and building future stewards, those preventative measures like getting access to the outdoors is one that we join you in championing and have all of our voices come together to support. When we think, yeah, I don't know if you wanted to comment.
I was just going to share, I mean, you know, this experience since March, as we battled the pandemic, has underscored just how important the outdoors is for our mental and emotional health, and of course, also our physical health. And, you know, I've been educated in the last year and a half in this role of just the direct connection between access and time in the outdoors and actual physical health. For me, this summer, the outdoors has been an incredible salve amidst a really troubling and uncertain time. I've been able to backcountry hike a little bit of the John Muir Trail, do some car camping with my family, get up into the Tahoe Basin for a couple of day trips. And I recognize that that is based on my privilege. That is based on the fact that I can actually do that. I have the means to actually go access that. I have the kind of job where I can carve out at least a little bit of time on the weekends to get that done. Not everybody has that. And the fact is that if we really consider parks and open space as critical to our health as people, we have to expand access to those parks, open spaces to more people. And it's not just about getting people to be able to travel far away. It's about bringing parks to people. And I've been really excited with the work of state parks, over the last several years under Director Lisa Manget, really working to expand that. LA's historic park, for example, in the middle of urban LA, is a great example of our state parks movement beginning to look toward urban parks as a critical piece of the puzzle to build. I'm really excited that we have a new parks director at the same time, Armando Quintero, who spent much of his career really focused and passionate about getting more people into parks and getting the folks who actually deliver the park experience to reflect the diversity of our country in California. As I've been educated by many of the groups maybe here today, access is not just about physical proximity. It's also about cultural inclusiveness, welcoming people. And part of that access is that people that work in our park systems reflect the diversity of people coming to the parks. So there's a lot of obviously aspects of how do we expand and improve access to our parks and open space. But I have to say, I'm so excited that your foundation is leaning forward on this. You have developed some remarkable tools that demonstrate, frankly, and call out the inequity that we have in our current park system, the so-called parks shed. What percentage of Californians that live in close proximity to a park? And I can tell you that we're using those tools within our agency to really help us prioritize investments in policies and programs. So really appreciate the partnership on this priority.
Yeah, that's exciting. Thank you for, sorry, strange echo. Thank you for recognizing that. Thank you for talking and acknowledging the privilege you have with your family and the opportunities that you're able to do and experience in the outdoors, because I think it takes that self-awareness and acknowledging us own as individuals what we have opportunities to and what others don't. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you for those comments. And yes, the UCLA research, if for those of you who haven't visited it, it's on our website, and we look at each 280 state park unit to better understand the attributes surrounding each community, one of which we've been looking at more closely lately is air quality. And the indexing that everyone, I think, every day is looking at because of the fires, because of, everything that we're experiencing, the outdoors is even being limited to healthy experiences. And, we think about how do we understand how green space works in building more healthy communities, how they're a social determinant of health. And I think we are growing in our understanding. We are all learning together, and really see the opportunity to understand how the state park unit is part of this overall, global fight, national fight. I mean, we are understanding, watching the temperatures drop in Colorado and how that has impacted winds that have fueled the fires in California. And we are seeing and living climate change, and it is real. It is here. It is now. Science does know. Thank you so much, Secretary, for that. And and with that, I think I'd like to sort of round out this conversation of what's next. What are some real concrete next steps that we can work on together? You mentioned building climate resiliency. Check. We're with you 100%. We are trying to do that within some of the volunteer grant work, advocacy work that we're doing. And that, and then continue to build equitable access, because nature is home, and nature needs to be home to everybody. So any final thoughts on some concrete next steps that we can do together to shepherd a thriving California?
Yeah, absolutely. So our undersecretary at the Natural Resources Agency, who's sort of our number two leader, my partner, Angela Barranco, has been leading an effort with many groups, I think including yours, to really develop a broad strategy to expand access. And that is really important, because it's one thing to elevate the priority and to give voice to the challenge we're looking to tackle. And then it's another thing to actually make progress. And so I think our next steps are really threefold. One is ensuring that our current programs and policies maximize access, and that where we have programs targeting access, we are maintaining them and growing them. I think we also need to look at long-term investments in our park systems that get parks closer to park-poor communities. That's obviously challenging given the coronavirus-driven budget challenges, but that's something that we really need to focus on. And then thirdly, we again need a workforce across our agency and the park system that really reflects the full diversity of California. So how do we bring more talented people from different California communities into the parks movement? So those are 3 areas of action, and we'll continue to work with you on fleshing out sort of specific progress we can make in each of those areas. I'll say this too, maybe to close, which is these are obviously challenging times. I think every last person that's participating here today has been impacted in ways they never imagined by this pandemic. And at the same time, we've had the challenges of extreme heat, these wildfires, this very unhealthy smoke that doesn't even allow our kids to go and play outside. These are challenging times, obviously, but I have to say the best is ahead of us. I am excited to work for Gavin Newsom, who is leaning forward on climate resilience, leaning forward on California for all. And we are absolutely committed to make progress on this. We've got a great network of non-governmental organizations, of course, including your own foundation, that are our key partners. And then lastly, Californians get it. Californians want us to build more climate resilience. They want us to expand and improve our park system. They want us to be able to provide more access to it to all Californians. So I think while the challenges in front of us are great, the resolve, and I should mention our legislature has been championing parks for a very long time. And we have huge park champions, as you know, Holly and Rachel, in the legislature. So we have this combination of absolute resolve, recognition of the challenge, political leadership, and then a populace that actually wants to be part of this movement. So I'm actually really optimistic. We've got major challenges, but I think on all of these things, we will prevail and make progress.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are wonderful closing words to, I think, a really helpful and insightful conversation, Secretary. I think you summed it up perfectly. We have the resolve, we have the political will, we have the foresight and the vision to do this, and California leads so often in times of crisis. And we've certainly seen our share here in our wonderful state. And you know, best wishes as you move through addressing so much of these challenges. We are a partner, and we speak for our thousands of members and our hundreds of partners in saying, you know, we're here, we're ready, and we can do this together. So thank you everybody so much for joining us. I tried to skim the questions and incorporate them in. It doesn't look like we're going to have time to get to every single one of them, but like I mentioned, we will circle back around on any specific questions that were mentioned and add to that. And please come back for our next webinar and stay in touch on how you can get involved in campaigns like Pathways to Parks, where we will be building and advocating for more equitable access to our state park system. And once again, we are also running our Wildfire Relief Fund. So if you have any support that you want to share at this time, whether it's now an immediate relief or as we move towards climate resilient grants to build up those preventative activities, please continue to follow us at CalParks and visit us at calparks.org. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I hope you are doing well after such a crazy, busy whirlwind. Really appreciate you making the time and joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much, Holly. Keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye now.